All right, so on this episode of Empowering Her, I have special guest Emily Ross from Refine Labs. And Emily, I am so happy to have you on here, not only because we all love Refine Labs, but because you are involved in an industry where you are doing things completely different. So, kind of paving a way for a lot of others. So, thank you for being on here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about what your current role is and kind of that journey that you went through to get where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the chief customer officer. I to back it up. So I went to college at University of Colorado Boulder. I was a psych major. I wasn't sure if I was going into like forensic psych. Thought about doing business school, and then from there I kind of just dove in. Like I knew different folks in different companies, so I started at Zipcar. I was an intern there, and then I think I was like a camp counselor at some point, kind of during the summers, which is always fun. I recommend it. And then, yeah, I started kind of realizing I wanted to get a little bit more into marketing. I really enjoyed talking to people, honestly. So, kind of when I thought about what I wanted to do for work, I also kind of kept in mind, like, what do I like to do just as a person, not necessarily like what's my career growth.
Right.
So, thinking about kind of being in marketing, working with clients, that side of things. So, I started off at Zipcar, and then I worked at a startup tech company. And then I ended up moving to New York, which is I also recommend. And that's where I kind of I worked in influencer marketing. But it was a little bit before I think influencers was really a thing.
Yeah.
And then I moved back to Boston, which is where I'm from. And I had a really, really exciting opportunity where I was able to open up a US office for a content marketing agency. And that's where something I think we'll probably talk about a little bit later, where, maybe it was a little bit kind of a reach in terms of what my experience was. But what I would say to everybody is believe in yourself. You can do it. Not everybody knows like every little thing that maybe is on a job description or you have the exact perfect experience. But if you think it's something that you can grow into and push to do, please do that. And then, yeah, after I was there for almost 7 years. So I typically
Okay.
like staying with companies for a long time and really kind of helping them grow. And then I made a pretty big shift and came over to Refine Labs, which I'm very, very excited about. So I've been here about 5 weeks, and I'm the chief customer officer there.
Fantastic. So I like what you said about, if you want to do something, go after it. Because I
Yeah.
really feel like, and that the younger you are, the more people are, um, you know, they, they want you to do that. For example, we have this girl in my neighborhood who does a lemonade stand, and everybody, they high five, they think it's great, entrepreneur. And then, but if I go out there and do a lemonade stand, they're going to be like, Josh, what are you doing? But we also see, when you're young and you're either going to college or, you could say, hey, I'm going to go backpack across Europe, and
Mhm.
people are like high five. But like, if you and I were to say, I'm going to go backpack across Europe, people are like, are you okay? Something. So I like, get in there, especially when you're young, and really start experimenting and kind of find out what you like to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so let's break down for, this, it'll primarily be 13 to 18-year-olds that will be watching this. And so for the students that are like, what does she do all day? Kind of give us an example of kind of what your day-to-day activities look like.
That is a good question. um, I would say it's always an interesting question, honestly, because it really is different every day. And I'd say depending on like, for most of these questions, I'll kind of think of it throughout my journey of my career because it can definitely vary. But overall, for the most part, I'm in my role, I'm kind of thinking about both internal teams at my company that I work at, and then also, again, if you're at an agency side and you're not on the client side, you're then thinking about your clients as well.
Right.
And so I'd say for both of those, I'm always thinking ahead. So I really want to make sure we're best in class. So we're thinking of kind of What's the best strategy in the future? How do we want to grow into that, both internally and also for clients? So that could be even process, and process means many different things. So process could even be how I communicate with people internally, or it could be how I share knowledge internally. That's kind of a little bit about that side. Internally, again, I could be having one-on-ones with my direct reports, checking in, making sure I'm supporting them, they have the resources they need. I might be talking to my teams about kind of status updates, just making sure, we're on track with clients and things like that. In my position now, there's probably a lot more kind of leadership conversations, and especially at this company now as we're growing, again, thinking about the future and how do we continue to grow in the best way possible. So having a lot of those conversations right now. And then again, on the other side, I might be having conversations with clients, checking in on, how is their business, how are we supporting them, making sure that they're happy. So it's kind of all over. It's lots of meetings, lots of strategic thinking, lots of writing down notes. I still use some people laugh at me, but that's okay.
No, it's because I have to half the time. I think half my battle every day is convincing my students that they'll actually might actually use writing in their day to day careers. So like, when are we ever going to use this? And I'm like, well,
Yes,
it's writing.
absolutely. Yeah, honest. It's funny you say that actually, because I'm one of those. If you asked a lot of my employees, they'd say I'm like the most OCD when it comes to emails. So I will like reread my email a million times, and there's a lot of emails being sent out throughout a day. So writing is very, very important. Yes.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because I don't think, especially at a younger age and maybe even an older age, we don't tend to think of emails as a form of writing. I think we have
Mhm.
the you know, I do a lot of old school pencil to paper in the
Yep.
classroom. They all want to get on keyboard and type. But I think there's so many aspects of the writing process that we don't think about, such as emails and drafting letters and things like that.
Hmm.
And so for your type of role, when you think of somebody that would be successful in that type of role, what kind of like personality traits, what kind of soft skills would be important? And I had a discussion about what soft skills are with my kids because I was like, soft skills, and they were like, what is that? So so sometimes we have to get on, the terminology gets a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I definitely don't want to limit. I don't like putting kind of strict rules around like you can only do this role if you
Right.
are this. So sometimes I hesitate to say some of that, but what I would say is, you definitely, for me, as I mentioned before, like I knew I liked this kind of role and this trajectory because I love talking to people.
Yep.
I also, and that doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert by any means. I think what I love about it is I'm always kind of strategically thinking. I love problem solving. So a lot of the times I get to talk to people, I'm always asking like, what's your goal? What are the problems you're trying to solve? And then almost kind of brainstorming with them, or brainstorming internally and coming back with a solution. So that, I think like liking to, talk with people, come up with solutions. Also, I'd say collaborate, but that's probably something you really should be able to do across the board in different functions. But being able to collaborate, make those decisions. So decision making is really important. And also being able to listen and take things in. It's really important to me before I make decisions to be able to hear from any level of employee, get their feedback, and then kind of be able to make that final decision. So really hear different people's opinions, feedback, brainstorm with different types of people, and then come back with that, solve that problem.
So I think every every transitioning teacher that will end up watching this is going to be like, I think that's the field I want to go into.
Yeah, I could do it. Yeah, totally.
So for your role,
Yeah.
um, would it be necessary to have a college degree? Does it make it helpful, or where does college play into for like your type of role?
Sure. So I did go to college. I think in general, it's definitely a great thing to do. Maybe more for, I think, the experience and exposure of kind of being able to interact with different folks, learn different things. That being said, I also know that not everybody has the ability to go to college.
Right.
And I think you absolutely still are able to kind of push through and, have a career path without college. I think what's most important is fighting for yourself and advocating for yourself. So that doesn't have to do with like the education that you had, or even the support or financial stability. It really is about like advocating for yourself, push for what you believe in. There are amazingly smart, talented employees out there that didn't go to college, and they're doing fantastic. So that was a long-winded answer of saying I don't think it's a requirement, but if you're able to, I definitely recommend and suggest it.
Well, and that's what, one of the things is kind of interesting to have noticed, and maybe this is the shift, as they called it the Great Resignation, and people are moving
Mhm.
careers. Is I've talked to so many people that they might have a degree, but their degree is completely unrelated to the field that they're working in, and so
Mhm.
that creates that interesting to where it's like, so you know, did the job posting just want you to have a degree and it doesn't matter what it's in? But so I like how you kind of mentioned that, because that way you're not really, if I go and get a certain degree, I'm not locked into that career path for the rest of my life.
No, absolutely not. And honestly, I think it's most important to enjoy what you're doing. Yes, of course, there's going to be days where you're like, what the heck? Why am I doing this?
Right.
But it's important to know that you're not stuck. So even thinking about like when you're, and maybe that's what's happening during this time with the Great Resignation, right? Is once you get to a point, make sure you're still happy and you're always, always learning. Like those are kind of the few things I think my dad actually taught me when I was younger. And I still kind of remind myself of that is like, are you waking up and you're happy to do your job and you're also continuing to learn no matter what? So maybe it's a good thing that, if you're in something that you don't like and you want to completely shift, that's okay. And it's okay to take that risk. A lot of people are doing that right now, and you'll still, you can still absolutely have a successful career.
So let me ask this, and it's not necessarily related to your field, but
Sure.
if there's you got a junior, a senior, and they're really kind of analyze, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I think we'd say like nothing is set in stone. But how do you start determining what you might like to do? What is that thought process by starting to kind of narrow down the roles that you might even start looking at?
I would probably say before you actually narrow anything down, I would almost broaden it at first to
Okay.
fully understand what's out there.
Okay.
Because a lot, when you're younger, we were talking about this earlier, like there's so many different opportunities. And
Right.
even within industry, there's actually so many paths you can take within that broader path. So I think the first thing to do is talk to as many people as possible if you're able to, and just kind of get a sense without kind of that narrow mind of what you think you already want to do, just kind of get that broad sense of what's out there. And then when you're narrowing it down, I think it's important to try hard not to think about like what's that end goal from a career path, but
Okay.
truly think about from a personal standpoint, like what would you love to do? Like what are the aspects of a job that you'd love to do?
Okay.
And maybe take away the title of a job or a company
Uh,
name or things like that, and really think about kind of the tasks that you'd be doing, the type of work. Some people, if you want to do nonprofits or you really want to help be really, really creative and things like that, versus saying, I want to be a creative director, that's what I want to be. That's kind of where I would start. And so just talk to as many people as possible and think about, as a person, not as an employee, what would make you happy, and even what would you love to learn about.
I think that's amazing advice, and I love that idea of stripping away titles
Mhm.
and things that might pigeonhole you in. And I was having a discussion with a friend of mine related to titles, and it was like, well, you know, I'm this, this is my role, and how do I get? And he's like, listen, stop thinking about it like that. He goes, it doesn't matter what your title is.
Yeah.
Everybody is a set of skills
Mhm.
to complete an objective. And he goes, so forget about your titles, because that's all it is. You have, and so you might need to go and get a few other skills, but stop pigeonholing yourself into your title. And I think sometimes we get kind of wrapped up in our identity into our title, which is probably a little bit more advanced for my students. But it's kind of like, so the first question is, they go, so tell me about yourself. And the very first thing you pop off with is and you kind of introduce yourself as what career you're in. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
tell
absolutely.
me, so if somebody was interested in kind of taking the path that you're in now, and they wanted a little bit more of a direct path to that.
Okay.
What might entry level look like, and kind of that that ladder to where you're at?
Sure. So there's kind of like there is definitely a clear linear path, but as you can tell, I kind of it's
Yeah.
okay to take different paths. So I'll start there, but really the easiest way to explain it is kind of that account management is where
Okay.
you could start. That's a little bit more on the junior side that you could, and that's client services, or in some industries it might be called customer success. So that's
Okay.
where you're really just kind of working with a client, having that day-to-day conversations with them, helping teams. And then next you could be an account director, and then a group account director, then go into VP. Again, it depends where you're going. And then EVP, and then it could be chief customer officer. But that being said, just to stay along with that, you can definitely kind of go from different angles. I will say it's most helpful if you at least have client experience,
Okay.
but it could be in a lot of different forms. So it doesn't have to directly be like an account director. There's a tons of different careers that you could start with that could then get you into that kind of leadership role. And I think what's important is that whenever you're looking at a job description and applying for a job, you don't need to have every single thing. Please, please still apply for something if you're just really excited about it. Even if you think it's maybe a little bit of a stretch,
Mhm.
you probably have a lot of aspects about yourself that you can bring to the table that maybe the recruiter wasn't even thinking of, or maybe it would really help in another way. And it also depends, what are the resources that team already has. So maybe it'd
Right.
be fantastic to add something else. So just remember that when you're applying for a job, just apply anyways if you think that you're really excited about it, even if it's a stretch.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, for example, like let's say the company uses, I don't know, Salesforce or whatever CRM. You may not know that, but if you are like just excited and driven, and you can show that you're trainable and coachable, sometimes those recruiters and hiring managers will go, you know what, this person is really hungry to succeed, which is more, we can train them or her on those hard skills, so, for most careers, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do when I'm looking at interviewing people. I'm not like, oh, did they check this and check this? You of course have to have some sort of standard, so it's
Right.
fair when you're interviewing everybody for sure, and you need the right support. But I will definitely talk to people that maybe don't have certain things just to kind of see if they're a good fit.
That's awesome. Let's talk mentors and mentorship for a minute. And in your opinion, how important are mentors, and what is your definition of mentorship?
It's a good question. When I was younger, I definitely had a different opinion and understanding of mentorship. So when I was younger, I'd be like, I don't need a mentor. I could, I'm proactive, I'm independent, I can do things. And then as I got older, I think I understood that mentorship can mean so many different things. It could be in your personal life. I played a lot of sports. So is it your soccer coach, your basketball coach? For me, this is a little silly, but I'd say like honestly, my parents. I'd say growing up, and I still to this day talk to my parents. My mom is a business owner. My dad's been a CEO for a while. So being able to tap into that has been super, super helpful. But it also can just be friends. So I would say mentorship, if you think of it maybe a bit more broadly, is really, really important. But it doesn't have to be this like very formal person that you set up calls with and they're even in the workforce and things like that. It could just be people that you're kind of getting advice from, or you're just be able to talk to and collaborate. It could be a peer that you just are having conversations with and learning from. So as long as you're learning from those folks, which you should always be doing, then it's definitely, definitely important.
I like that, because I think that, and I even thought this way until not too long ago, was that mentors are those that are kind of a little bit more high and lofty, and
Yep.
you're like in awe of. And I've come to realize, especially talking to so many, of you, that like mentors are those that are just, they might just know a little bit more. They might be a little bit more wise. They might be a friend. They could be a family. It could be a teacher. It could be anybody that you can kind of learn something from. So, it's definitely a mind shift, with thinking about that mentoring. So if it's kind of two questions here, one of the questions that the kids are always, and for some reason they think if you make $100,000, that's like you are top of the food chain. So, and I
I
don't know,
remember thinking that. I hear that.
yeah, I don't know where
Yeah.
that number comes from,
Yep.
but kind of in your role, as an average, is somebody able to make a six-figure salary?
Yes,
Okay,
definitely. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
okay, that was they're always like, do they make $100,000? I'm like, what? Why is that the magic
I
number?
love that they have that in their mind. And
Right.
again, like I think I've answered every question the same way as
Yeah.
advocate for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
you can't ask for like, a crazy number that just makes no sense, but push for yourself. I think, a lot of times, especially unfortunately, girls are, sometimes used to kind of not necessarily pushing for it and asking for it.
Yeah.
But speak up, and definitely if you feel that you deserve that raise, or, when you're getting a new job, you deserve a certain salary, ask for it. Don't be afraid. It doesn't, I think sometimes people are afraid it'll look bad, or, the company is not going to like them because they asked for something. Like, that is not the case at all. So go for it.
So I've come to realize that companies actually expect you to kind of go back and forth on things. And I
Yes.
also found out, and Heidi schooled me on this, and I was that women tend to be better negotiators and are better salespeople than men. And I wasn't going to argue with her.
Yeah.
I was like, that. But it was really interesting because she started talking about it, and I was like, well, why is that? Because and so she was, the responses, well, men tend to listen to respond, whereas women tend to listen to understand. And so when you have that understanding, you are more empathetic towards the situation. And I was like, okay, that completely makes sense. So if you had a college student or a high school student, and they kind of really liked your role, or maybe they like to refine labs, or whatever company it may be,
Yeah.
are most companies open to, if they come and say, hey, I'd like to shadow, I'd like to do an internship, or I'd like to just understand what it's like to work at your company, are most companies open and receptive to that idea?
Yeah, I think definitely yes. Like, even you hearing them like, please, yes, I'd love that. The one thing, not all of them are set up for that. And so what's been amazing is, I'd say a while back, even when I was an intern, we kind of would just throw that around. And sadly, it would kind of just be like, come be an intern so you could help me do stuff. Now it's thankfully that's changed a little bit. Now I think companies are a lot more thoughtful. So there's almost
Mhm.
like internship programs.
Okay.
And I'd honestly recommend, if you want to be an intern somewhere, to make sure they have that, because then you're not just kind of like sitting there having someone just tell you to do lots of random things. An internship, yeah, right. An internship, used to that. More of a program and something that's been like planned out to be shadowing someone will be a lot more helpful, and you'll learn a lot more. And not all companies have that.
Yeah.
We've actually been talking about it internally. We don't necessarily, just because we are kind of a lot younger, we don't have a full
Right.
program set up, but we've been talking about that and think it would be fantastic, honestly, just to be able to mentor
Mhm.
and allow for others to learn about the space and grow into that if they'd like.
It's made me like, yes, we'll
Yeah.
take an intern. You're gonna need to bring copy,
Right.
coffee. Go make these copies,
Yeah.
and at the end of it, like, what did you learn? I don't know, but I sure was
Nothing.
busy the whole time.
Making really good coffee. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so kind of a hot seat question for you,
Okay.
and your answer doesn't have to be related to education or career, anything you want. But knowing what you know now, what is one piece of advice that you would give your middle school or high school self?
Try to stay positive and optimistic, um, because no matter the situation, even if it's a, I guess, bad situation or something you don't love, you'll always be able to learn from it no matter what it is. So try your hardest to stay positive and optimistic and keep learning.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate your time. This has been great. Just sharing, the kind of that career path that got you where you're at, but also kind of more of a linear way to get there, and insights on mentorship. And I think that these are so important because I think to my own time, and it was like career day was universities rolling out their, hey, for $50,000 you can get an engineering degree, and you can get this. And so, you know myself and so many others, we kind of start, you stumble into certain careers
Mhm.
later on in life, and you're like, I wish I had known that these were out here, right? Where was this at? And so that's why I thought this was important, just to kind of
Yes.
bring that knowledge. And and we don't even, like, we have Votex, but we don't even really advocate for the Votex very much, which is a shame, because those are great programs. So I this has been so important and, like, amazing, and thank you so much.
No, thank you for bringing me in. It's a pleasure, and I'm happy to hopefully help.
Yes,
And honestly, if I don't know if other people are doing this, but if any of your students want to reach out or have follow up questions, like I'm always happy to help and be there for them. So thank you for doing this. I think it's fantastic. It's amazing.
that's awesome. I usually ask that afterwards, because I hate to put somebody on a spot, because they go, yeah, that would be great, and then afterwards they have to go, hey, I really can't do it, but I didn't want
No,
to.
I am totally available. I would be more than happy to help anybody if they have
Right.
any questions, of course.
Well, fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and we'll chat very soon.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.